Welcome to this quick demo of Droplet. All Droplet systems have a Droplet client, and the main purpose of this Droplet client is to make a secure connection to the Droplet server. It also lists and enumerates the applications the end user has access to. For the most part, that application just sits in the system tray, and then users just do a double click to either get their legacy application. In this case, here I'm showing a very old version of Microsoft Office, the 2003 edition, and we're equally capable of delivering modern applications as well through the same interface. One common application of Droplet is to solve the web browser problem, and we have the capabilities of running multiple web browsers of different generations from the same PC. So here I have the web browser that initially was distributed with Windows XP, that's IE7, and here I have the version of IE11, so we can support multiple web browsers. By default, we present just an application, but we are able to deliver a desktop experience to end users as well. So for power users who prefer to use an entire desktop experience, that can be delivered by Droplet as well. This particular desktop is a Windows 11 desktop. At the heart of Droplet is the Droplet Server Appliance. This is our dashboard, which shows you the current consumption. I've got many Droplet containers running on this system. I've got a mix of Windows-based containers, Linux-based containers, and also containers that provide our applications. The administrator gets a console view on the container. So this particular container was used to deliver the legacy application. This container was used to deliver the modern application. And of course, we're equally able to containerize legacy Windows Server or legacy Linux-based systems using Droplet. These particular containers originally started their life as virtual machines running in vSphere and were converted by our administrators into the Droplet format. So Droplet can create a complete platform within legacy applications, and legacy servers are protected and accessible only with the secure Droplet client. And that's the end of this demo. Thank you very much for your time. I've got a Windows 11 PC here, and the Droplet client has already been installed. The Droplet client sits in the system tray out of line of sight of the end user. So they generally don't interact with this client that I've just restored here. It usually sits in the system tray. And of course, we've got clients not just for Windows, but for Chromebook, Linux, and Apple Mac as well. On a Windows system, the user gets a series of icons on their desktop. These can be suppressed if you don't want that, and you can create your own icons with your own shortcuts if you want to. But the user just does have a double-click process by which they load up their application. So from the user's perspective, their legacy application that they have available on their system just runs as it's always done. They double-click a shortcut, they get their application. So here I'm running an application which is extremely old. It's a very old version of Microsoft Office 2003. I'd have to say, when we're getting engaged with customers around legacy applications, we don't tend to see something shrink-wrapped like Microsoft that often. It's usually an application which is specific to the business, either an industry vertical like aerospace or finance, or even specific to that organization itself. Of course, we're not just about legacy applications. We can run modern applications with the same degree of performance and finesse. So this application is all running inside Droplet. Again, we have some customers running the very latest version of Office in Droplet, but usually what customers are aiming at is some line of business application which is critical to their organization. So just remember, Droplet isn't just about legacy. We do modern applications as well. We're an entire application delivery platform. One common request from some of our customers is the ability to run legacy web browsers. Frequently, these particular applications have plugins that are now not allowed on most people's PCs. I'm thinking of things like Silverlight, Acrobat Flash, legacy versions of Java, or some kind of plugin from Oracle to access a database. So here on the left-hand side, I've got an ancient version of Internet Explorer, version 11, the native version. We're not in any compatibility mode here at all. It's the genuine article. And just to give you an idea of our capabilities and how deep we can go, the web browser on the right-hand side is IE6. Now, this was the web browser that first shipped with Windows XP many decades ago now. Yeah, so we can go right back to some of the older applications that you can think of. So the main thing to mention about this experience is that everything that I'm doing is being delivered remotely. Although the application looks like it's running on screen and looks like it's running locally, it's actually being delivered remotely, yeah, through our Droplet server appliance. We do have a model where we can run a container locally, and that's in that situation, the container uses the local memory, CPU, and disk of the PC. And this is popular amongst our customers who need an offline capability because they have operatives working in the field, sometimes literally in a field where there's no 3G, no 4G, no 5G, no Wi-Fi, and therefore remote delivery either from the cloud or from a corporate data center just isn't possible. Another good use case for a local container is where you've got service engineers plugging in USB cables, serial cables, any number of different interfaces to do maintenance work on some kind of device. You know, we have people using that in nuclear facilities and again in aerospace and in automotive. Yep. When used in this particular manner, accessing the application completely remotely, the client is very lightweight. Less than 100 megabytes worth of software needs to be sent to the desktop as a payload to provide the application. So we're very, very lightweight on the endpoint. So what I want to do now is just switch to the back end of Droplet and give you a very quick overview of how we do this, and also flag up the fact that we're not just about end user apps, we're also about servers as well. So let me just show you the environment I am working in. Now I've got here the very latest and greatest version of vSphere. Just for disclosure, I used to work at VMware and I was part of the VMware community from the very early days back in 2003 and onwards. And I just have a preference for my demo and my lab to be running on vSphere. We obviously do support Hyper-V, Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud. So we're completely platform neutral in terms of where you run Droplet. Just because you're seeing VMware here doesn't mean we're a VMware only product. The beating heart of Droplet is something we call the DSA, or the Droplet Server Appliance. It's just a virtual machine, which either runs in Azure or runs in Google Cloud or runs on vSphere. And it won't come to any surprise to you that what runs inside that virtual machine is a distribution of Linux. In the modern era, the era of people writing their own operating systems to do this sort of stuff has sort of come to an end. So you have a very lightweight distribution of Linux, and to which we add our software and then package it up for rapid deployment to customers' environments. When my colleagues and I are speaking to the C-suite, I often like to say that we're a combination of open source and secret source. The open source is Linux, and the secret source, well, that's Droplet. So running inside this appliance, I've got a number of containers. This particular container is the one I use for delivering the legacy application. So when I went to my Windows PC and I said, give me a copy of this really old version of Word, where that came from was from this container here. These containers do support multi-session connectivity. So more than one user can connect to the container and get the application. And because of that, we're a combination of both being a scale up and a scale out technology. We can get more users and more performance by giving the container and the appliance more CPU and more memory. That's the scale up portion. But we also have our own load balancer, which allows us to have multiple Droplet server appliances and distribute the load across multiple DSAs. And of course, in our biggest environments, customers use a combination of scale up and scale out to meet the desired concurrency that they need. So we're very different from the sort of VDI model that you might know of old from other companies, where every single user got their own personal desktop, consuming massive amounts of memory, disk, and CPU, with a lot of IOPS being created on the storage backend. We're a shared model in the sense that one container can deal with the requests of multiple users, which we feel is the most efficient use of your memory and CPU resources in your data center or in your cloud. And with the way cloud economics are going, consuming less is always going to mean less of a bill in your credit card at the end of the month. So this container was set up without any applications installed, and all I did was use the standard setup program to install the old version of Office. I've got a library of software which is now somehow 30 years going back, because that's how long I've been in IT. So there's no special sequencing or recording or capturing process needed to install these apps. You just install them like you've always done. Run a setup routine and on you go. We do have some customers who've got legacy applications that are so old, they've lost the software, they've lost the licenses, nobody knows how it works. And they've got a number of PCs or virtual machines that has the software working, but no one in the organization knows how to actually get that thing working now. And that is kind of a forensic data recovery process. We can use tools to capture any physical machine, any virtual machine, and convert it into a droplet container and then use that as a source. I'd say about 90% of our customers, or perhaps more, do a clean install, because if you've been in the industry a while, we all know that a clean install works better than any upgrade. But if you're in that wheelhouse where there's really no options, nobody has the software or the licenses have been lost, we can actually recover that kind of configuration. The other container that I showed you was the container that is running the modern applications. The modern applications. Same principle here. It's just based on a newer kernel that we have. And I installed the modern applications into this particular system. So when the user did a double click to say, I want the latest version of Excel, it came out of this container here. And then the last thing I want to mention is that I've focused obviously on apps, and we can be just an end user compute solution to customers delivering either legacy or modern apps. But frequently our customers say, I've got this legacy application, but it also connects to an equally old legacy server environment, which is a problem to the business. Can you help? And the answer is yes, we can. We have the ability to capture the state of any legacy server, whether it's physical or virtual, and make that run inside a droplets environment. So here I'm showing 2003, 2008, and also 2012 running inside droplet. Where these containers originally came from was in my vSphere environment. And they were exported out of vSphere using the OVA format and then converted by us into a droplet container. Once both the client and the server are all running within the context of the droplet bubble, for want of a better way of putting it, they are protected by the NeverTrust encryption algorithm that we use to encrypt all access. They're completely isolated from the corporate network. The only way in, the only way out is by using droplet. And we can deliver the applications to the user seamlessly, so they're not even aware that any of this is actually happening. Pretty cool, eh? Anyway, that's the end of my demo. Thanks for joining us. And